I thought the worst part of my wedding night was the stress, until I found my husband and sister missing. What I discovered next shattered everything I believed in. I had always dreamed of my wedding day. I imagined the flowers, the music, the dress that would make me feel like a princess. And for a moment, everything was perfect. The vows, the first dance, the way my husband, Ethan, held my hand as if he would never let go. But looking back now, I realized that perfection was just an illusion. The signs were there, subtle but present, small glances, shared whispers, attention that I couldn't quite place. And yet, I ignored them, blinded by the fairy tale I so desperately wanted to believe in. The night started beautifully. After months of planning, my wedding had finally come together. The venue was breathtaking. Twinkling fairy lights draped across the garden, casting a warm glow over our guests as they laughed and celebrated. The air smelled of roses and champagne, and everywhere I looked, there were smiling faces. My heart swelled with joy. I was finally married to the love of my life. Ethan looked dashing in his suit, his hazel eyes filled with adoration every time he looked at me, or so I thought. He whispered sweet nothings into my ear, stole kisses when no one was looking, and held me close as if he wanted time to freeze in that moment. It was everything a bride could ask for. And yet, there was an unsettling feeling in my chest, a nagging doubt that I kept pushing away. It started with my sister, Olivia. Olivia had always been the golden girl, the one everyone adored, the one who could do no wrong. She was beautiful, charismatic, the life of every party. Growing up, I had always felt like her shadow, but I never resented her for it. She was my older sister, my best friend. She had helped me pick out my wedding dress, plan my bachelorette party, and stood beside me as my maid of honor. But tonight, something was off. I noticed how Olivia kept finding ways to be close to Ethan. It was small things, fixing his tie, touching his arm, whispering something to him that made him chuckle. At first, I thought I was imagining it. After all, she was just being friendly. They had always gotten along well. Then came the dance. I was making my rounds, thanking guests. When I saw them on the dance floor, Ethan and Olivia, lost in conversation, their bodies close, her laughter soft and intimate. My stomach twisted. It was the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but I shook it off. It was my wedding night. I refused to let paranoia ruin it. I tried to enjoy the rest of the evening, but a storm was brewing inside me. Every time I turned, Olivia and Ethan were together. I convinced myself it was nothing, that I was just tired, overwhelmed, that I was reading too much into things. And then, just as the party was winding down, they both disappeared. At first, I didn't panic. Maybe they had stepped out for some air. Maybe Ethan had gone to check on something, and Olivia had gone to the restroom. But as the minutes passed, and neither of them returned, unease crept into my bones. I searched the venue, weaving through the last of the guests, smiling through my growing anxiety. I asked the best man if he had seen Ethan. He hadn't. I checked with my bridesmaids, my parents. No one had seen Olivia either. The unease turned to dread. I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. Straight to voicemail. I tried Olivia next. Same thing. Panic bloomed in my chest. My wedding night was supposed to be filled with love, laughter, and promises of forever. Instead, I found myself wandering through the venue, desperately searching for my husband and my sister. Finally, I found one of the security guards. "Did you see my husband leave?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. The guard hesitated. Yeah, I saw him leave about 20 minutes ago." My breath hitched. Was he alone? The guard shook his head. "No, he was with a woman. Your sister, I think." It felt like the ground beneath me crumbled. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay composed. "Did you see where they went?" "They got into a black car. Looked like an Uber. A car. Together. On my wedding night." My mind raced with explanations. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe Olivia wasn't feeling well, and Ethan took her home. Maybe. No. The sinking feeling in my stomach told me the truth, even if I wasn't ready to face it. I needed to know. Gripping my phone, I turned to my closest friend, Ava. "I need you to drive me somewhere." She took one look at my face and nodded. "Where are we going?" I exhaled shakily. "We're going to find them." I didn't care if I was overreacting. I didn't care if this ruined the night. If I didn't find out the truth now, I would never forgive myself. As we got into Ava's car, I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, a storm of emotions raging inside me. I clenched my fists, bracing myself for whatever I was about to uncover. I just prayed I was wrong. But deep down, I already knew. The night that was supposed to be the happiest of my life was about to become my worst nightmare. The drive felt endless. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone, refreshing Ethan's location over and over. It was something we had set up months ago for safety reasons, a harmless feature for when one of us was traveling late at night. Now, it felt like a double-edged sword. Ava glanced at me from the driver's seat. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I nodded, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "I have to." The pin on my screen hadn't moved for the past 15 minutes. A hotel. My stomach churned as I read the name. Ridgewood Inn. A small, secluded boutique hotel, not the kind of place anyone would book last minute unless they wanted privacy. Unless they had something to hide. Ava sucked in a breath when she saw the location. "You don't know why they're there." "Maybe." She hesitated, struggling to find a reasonable explanation. Maybe Olivia needed a place to stay, and Ethan was just dropping her off? It was a weak excuse. And we both knew it. If Olivia needed to leave, she could have told me. She had no reason to disappear with my husband, on my wedding night, without a single word. I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to keep breathing as the hotel came into view. My body felt numb, as if I were floating outside of myself, watching the scene unfold like a terrible movie. The parking lot was mostly empty, and then I saw it. Ethan's car. My throat tightened as I stared at the vehicle we had driven in together so many times. The same car where we had shared countless road trips, late-night talks, kisses at red lights. And now, it was here. Ava parked beside it and turned to me. "What's the plan?" I didn't have one. I had spent the entire drive imagining what I might do, how I might react, but nothing felt real. I just need to see. I stepped out of the car, each movement stiff, robotic. My heels clicked against the pavement as I made my way toward the entrance. The warm glow of the hotel lights felt eerily inviting, a sharp contrast to the storm raging inside me. I walked straight to the front desk, forcing a smile as I approached the receptionist. "Hi, I'm looking for my husband. I think he checked in a little while ago." The young woman at the desk glanced at me, then at Ava, and hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't give out guest information." I exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. "I understand. But please, I just need to know if he's here." My voice cracked, my desperation slipping through. The receptionist's eyes softened. She glanced around, as if checking for her manager, then lowered her voice. "A couple checked in about 20 minutes ago. Room 214. The confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut. "A couple. Room 214. I whispered a shaky, "Thank you," before turning away, my legs carrying me toward the elevator on autopilot. Ava followed closely behind. Silent but solid, my anchor in this unraveling nightmare. Each ding of the elevator made my stomach tighten. By the time the doors slid open on the second floor, I could barely breathe. I counted the numbers as I walked down the dimly lit hallway, my hands clammy, my heartbeat a deafening drum in my ears. And then, I was there. I stared at the door, my hand hovering just inches from the handle. My mind screamed at me to turn around, to walk away, to pretend I never saw that car in the parking lot. But my heart, my shattered, aching heart, needed to know. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again, harder this time. A few seconds passed before I heard muffled movement from inside. Then, the handle twisted. The door opened just enough for me to see him. Ethan. His hair was slightly tousled, his shirt wrinkled as if he had been in a rush to put it back on. His face paled the moment he saw me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. What are you doing here?" His voice was hoarse, almost panicked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My eyes flickered past him, toward the dimly lit room behind him, and that's when I saw her. Olivia. She was standing near the bed, wearing nothing but a hotel robe, her long hair cascading down her shoulders. The world tilted beneath me. I felt like I was drowning, like the air had been sucked out of the hallway, leaving me gasping for breath. Ethan stepped forward, his hands reaching for me. But I flinched back as if his touch might burn me. "It's not what it looks like," he blurted out. A bitter laugh bubbled in my throat. "Not what it looks like." My sister stood there in a hotel robe. My husband, disheveled and guilty, blocking the doorway as if he could somehow shield me from the truth. "You." My voice was barely above a whisper. "How long?" Ethan clenched his jaw. It's how long? I repeated, my voice sharper now. A long silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, Olivia spoke. Since before the wedding. My entire body locked in place. Before the wedding. I blinked, unable to process the words. What? Ethan let out a heavy breath, running a hand through his hair. It just happened. I let out a hollow laugh. Stepping back as the pieces finally clicked into place. The stolen glances. The hushed conversations. The way Olivia had been too involved in my wedding. Helping me pick out details while knowing full well she was sleeping with my fiancé. My own sister. My hands trembled, but I refused to let them see me break. Not here. Not now. I straightened my spine, forcing myself to meet Ethan's guilty gaze. You're a coward, I whispered. His face twisted. I didn't mean. I turned to Olivia, my voice eerily calm. And you? Was this some kind of game for you? Did it make you feel powerful to steal something that was never yours? Olivia swallowed hard. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at her, feeling nothing but disgust. Well, congratulations. You did. Ethan reached for me again, but I stepped back, my movements sharp and decisive. I turned on my heel, walking away without another word. Ava was already by the elevator, her face pale with fury. She didn't ask me anything. She didn't need to. She simply held out her hand, and I took it. As we stepped into the elevator, I let out a slow, shaky breath. I had come here searching for answers, hoping I was wrong. But the truth was worse than anything I could have imagined, and it shattered everything I believed in. I didn't cry. Not on the ride home. Not when Ava parked outside my apartment, watching me with concern etched into every feature. Not when I stepped inside, slipping off my heels like it was just another night. I should have broken down, screamed, thrown something. But there was only emptiness and eerie, hollow silence stretching inside me like an endless void. Ava followed me in, hesitant. Do you want me to stay? I shook my head. I need to be alone. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. But if you need anything, call me. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood motionless in the middle of my living room, staring at the shadows stretching across the walls. My husband and my sister. The words echoed inside my head, unraveling everything I thought I knew. It wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't a drunken mistake or a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate betrayal. They had looked me in the eye, time and time again, and lied. My sister had helped me plan my wedding, all while sleeping with the man I was about to marry. I walked toward the bedroom, my fingers trailing over the wedding dress still hanging in my closet. The delicate lace. The fabric that I had once run my hands over with pure excitement. I yanked it down. The hanger snapped, the dress collapsing onto the floor in a heap of white. I wanted to rip it apart, tear through the seams, destroy every piece of the illusion I had been living in. But my body betrayed me. I sank onto the bed, the weight of exhaustion pulling me down, and finally, the tears came. The next morning, I woke up to the harsh light streaming through my window, my head pounding from hours of crying. My throat was raw, my limbs heavy. I checked my phone, 13 missed calls from Ethan. 6 from Olivia. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting in disgust. Then, a message popped up. Ethan, please talk to me. I can explain. Explain? There was nothing left to explain. I already knew the truth. I tossed my phone onto the nightstand, forcing myself out of bed. My reflection in the mirror looked like a ghost. Puffy eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, a hollow stare. But beneath it, something shifted. A slow, simmering rage. I had spent my entire life playing the role of the good girl, the understanding sister, the forgiving wife, the woman who always put others first. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone, my hand steady now as I dialed a number I never thought I'd have to call. When the voice on the other end picked up, I exhaled. Hi, I need a lawyer. 3 days passed before I saw Ethan again. I hadn't responded to a single one of his texts or calls. Olivia had also tried reaching out. Her messages filled with hollow apologies and pathetic justifications. I ignored them both, but I wasn't going to hide. If they thought they could ruin my life and walk away unscathed, they were wrong. So when Ethan finally showed up at my apartment, knocking insistently at the door, I let him in. He looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes. His normally put-together appearance disheveled. Jesus, I thought you were never going to talk to me, he said, stepping inside. I crossed my arms, keeping my expression cold. I'm not here to talk. Ethan, I'm here to listen. So go ahead. Explain. His Adam's apple bobbed. I never meant for this to happen. I let out a dry laugh. That's the best you've got? His eyes flickered with guilt. I swear to you, I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I tilted my head. But you did. Over and over again. He swallowed hard. It was complicated. Complicated. The word sent a wave of fury through me. You slept with my sister, Ethan, I snapped. On my wedding night. Behind my back. That's not complicated. That's disgusting. He ran a hand through his hair. Exhaling sharply. I was confused. For how long? I cut him off. His silence was my answer. I shook my head, my hands curling into fists. Was it before the engagement? He hesitated, then nodded. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Before the engagement. Before the vows. Before the promises of forever. You had every opportunity to stop this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You could have told me the truth. You could have walked away. But instead, you made me believe in something that was never real. His eyes glistened. I loved you. I flinched. No, you didn't. If you had, you never would have done this. A heavy silence settled between us. He knew I was right. Finally, I took a slow breath, straightening my shoulders. I'm filing for divorce. His eyes widened. Wait, I've already met with a lawyer, I continued, ignoring his protests. I'll send over the paperwork. Don't contact me again. He reached for my hand. Desperation in his gaze. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I pulled away. There's nothing left to fix. For the first time, I saw a panic flicker in his expression. He had expected me to scream, to cry, to beg him to stay. But I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I turned toward the door, opening it. Goodbye, Ethan. He stared at me, his face crumbling. But I didn't waver. And when he finally stepped outside, I shut the door without another word. I wasn't done. Ethan was out of my life. But there was still one person left. Olivia. She had texted me that morning. Olivia, can we talk? Please. I had ignored it. But now? I was ready. I showed up at her apartment later that evening. She answered the door, eyes puffy, her face a mess of guilt. Oh my God. She whispered. You actually came. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. She looked at me, her hands trembling. I know you hate me. I didn't respond. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. I never wanted this to happen. You keep saying that, I said flatly. But you still did it. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I studied her for a long moment. Then, finally, I spoke. You can't. Her lips parted. Please. I shook my head. You were my sister. My best friend. And you destroyed everything. She sobbed. I didn't mean to hurt you. You made a choice, Olivia. I cut her off. And now you have to live with it. Her face crumpled. So, what now? I exhaled slowly. Now? We're done. She let out a choked sob. You don't mean that. I do. For the first time, I felt free. I turned to leave, my chest lighter than it had been in days. And as I walked out the door, I knew I would never look back. I walked away from Olivia's apartment with my head high, my shoulders back, and my heart lighter than it had been in days. I had spent my entire life believing that family was everything, that no matter what, the bond between sisters was unbreakable. But Olivia had shattered that illusion the moment she chose betrayal over loyalty. And now I was done. The cold evening air hit my skin as I stepped onto the sidewalk, but I barely felt it. My mind was already turning, mapping out my next steps. I had cut Ethan out of my life. I had severed my connection with Olivia. Now, it was time to make sure neither of them could come crawling back. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. Are you sure you want to go through with this? He asked, flipping through the papers on his desk. It's been less than a week since the wedding. I nodded, my voice firm. I don't care about the timeline. I want the divorce finalized as soon as possible. He studied me for a moment, as if searching for hesitation. But there was none. All right, he finally said. Nodding. We'll push for an annulment, given the circumstances. If your husband cooperates, this could be over quickly. I almost laughed at the word husband. Ethan was no husband of mine. He was a mistake I would soon erase. I want it done, I said simply. My lawyer leaned back in his chair. And what about public exposure? I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You have evidence, he said, tapping his pen against the folder. The hotel records. The text messages. If you wanted, you could take this public. Make sure everyone knows exactly what they did. The idea sent a sharp thrill through me. Did I want revenge? Did I want to watch their perfect little world crumble beneath their feet the way mine had? For a moment, I imagined it. Ethan's colleagues finding out what he had done, Olivia's reputation among our family and friends in ruins. I exhaled slowly, forcing the fantasy away. No, I said, shaking my head. That's not who I am. He nodded in understanding. Then we'll keep this clean and professional. You'll have your freedom soon. I stood up, shaking his hand. Thank you. I had no intention of stooping to their level, but I wasn't done yet. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at my apartment again. I hadn't responded to a single one of his messages since our last conversation, but he wasn't the type to accept rejection easily. When I opened the door, he looked worse than before, unshaven. Exhausted, his usual confident posture replaced by a slump. Please, he said, his voice raw. Can we talk? I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. There's nothing left to say, Ethan. His hands curled into fists at his sides. I know I screwed up. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I love you. A bitter laugh escaped me. You don't love me. You never did. His face twisted. That's not true. Then why did you do it? I demanded, my voice rising. Why did you propose to me when you were already sleeping with my sister? He opened his mouth, then closed it, as if struggling for words. I shook my head, stepping back. You don't have an answer, do you? His jaw tightened. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I let out a hollow laugh. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a better way for me to find out? He exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. I thought I could have both. The words hit me like a slap. I stared at him in disbelief. You thought you could have both? He had the audacity to look ashamed. I didn't want to lose you. And I didn't want to lose her either. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My hands trembled at my sides, not with sadness, but with pure, unfiltered rage. You're pathetic, I whispered. Ethan flinched. I took a slow step forward. My voice deadly calm. You lost everything the moment you made that choice. You don't get to play the victim now. His eyes flashed with desperation. Get off my property. His mouth snapped shut. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw it, the realization sinking in. He had lost me, and nothing he said would change that. Slowly, he nodded. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I turned around, walked inside, and locked the door behind me. I never saw Ethan again after that. As for Olivia, she tried one last time to reach me. A message left on my voicemail. Olivia, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say this. I never meant to hurt you. I swear to God, I didn't. I was weak. I was selfish. And I ruined everything. A pause. I don't expect you to forgive me. But if you ever change your mind, if you ever wanted to talk, I'll be waiting. I deleted the message. Some betrayals could never be undone. 1 month later, my annulment was finalized. I stood outside the courthouse, staring down at the papers in my hands. It was official. The wedding was erased, the marriage legally void. Ava stood beside me, grinning. How do you feel? I took a deep breath. Free. And I meant it. For weeks, I had been consumed by grief, by anger, by the unbearable weight of betrayal. But standing here now, holding my future in my own hands, I felt lighter than I had in years. Ava nudged me playfully. So, what's next? I thought about it. For the first time in a long time, I had no answer. And that was okay, because this was my fresh start. No more lies. No more illusions. No more pretending to be the girl who forgave, who accepted less than she deserved. I smiled. Whatever the hell I want. That night, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I lit a candle, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on my balcony, watching the stars. I didn't think about Ethan. I didn't think about Olivia. I thought about me. And for the first time in forever, that was enough. Because they thought they had destroyed me. But in reality, they just set me free. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking Reddit cheating stories happening around you.